The palace staff knew something was terribly wrong when they heard the sound. It came from behind closed doors, a sound they had never heard before in all their years of service. Prince William was crying, deep, broken sobs that seemed to tear through the walls themselves. What could break a man who had buried his mother with dry eyes at 15? What could shatter a prince trained from birth to never show weakness? Hours earlier, Catherine had locked the sitting room door, and no one was allowed in, just the family. When the children finally emerged, their faces were pale and their eyes wide with shock. What had their mother told them in that room? Medical emergency. Royal scandal, a threat to the crown. But the truth, when it finally came out, was something nobody could have predicted, something that made every other royal crisis look insignificant, something that would change their lives forever. The announcement Catherine made that day contained a secret so explosive, so deeply personal that when you hear it, you will understand why William cried as if his world were ending. Because in many ways, it was. Stay with us. The strange behavior. Something had shifted in Princess Kate months ago, though pinpointing exactly when proved impossible. William replayed conversations in his mind, searching for the moment things changed. But the transformation had been gradual, almost invisible, until suddenly it was not. She started declining invitations she would normally accept, citing exhaustion or scheduling conflicts that did not quite add up. Her usual warmth at public appearances seemed forced. Her smiles practiced rather than genuine. Palace staff noticed too, whispering in corners about how the princess seemed distracted somewhere else, even when physically present. The first concrete sign came during a family dinner when Catherine abruptly excused herself, claiming a headache. William followed her upstairs minutes later and found her sitting on the bathroom floor, phone clutched in her hand, tears streaming down her face. She quickly wiped her eyes when she heard him approach, straightening her posture, rebuilding the walls he had just glimpsed behind. When he asked what was wrong, she insisted it was nothing, just stress from their packed schedule. He wanted to push harder, to demand honesty, but something in her expression stopped him. She was not ready to talk. Forcing the issue would only make her retreat further. George mentioned to his father in a private moment that Mom had been acting weird. She picked him up from school 3 times last week instead of sending protection officers, something she rarely did without planning. She asked him strange questions during the drive home, questions about his dreams for the future, what he valued most in life, whether he ever wished their family were normal, whatever normal meant. George found the conversations unsettling, not because they were inappropriate, but because his mother seemed desperate for his answers, as if his words carried weight beyond casual curiosity. Charlotte noticed her mother crying in the garden one afternoon, hidden behind rose bushes where she thought no one could see. Charlotte did not interrupt, sensing this was private grief, not meant for sharing, but the image haunted her. Her mother was the strongest person she knew. Someone who handled everything with grace and determination. Seeing her broken like that frightened Charlotte in ways she could not articulate. She mentioned it to her father cautiously, unsure if she was betraying her confidence. William thanked her gently as his concern deepened into something closer to danger. The palace staff reported other oddities. Princess Kate had requested access to the royal archives, which are typically reserved for historical research. She spent hours reading through old documents, and when asked about her sudden interest in family history, she claimed she was preparing material for a future project about royal heritage. The explanation seemed plausible but felt incomplete. William confronted her one evening after the children were asleep. He had reached his breaking point, unable to ignore the mounting evidence that something serious was happening. "Catherine, please, whatever this is, we face it together. You do not have to carry this alone." She looked at him with eyes full of pain and something else he could not identify. Fear perhaps, or guilt. "I know," she whispered. "And I promise I will tell you everything soon. But right now, I need you to trust me. I need you to believe that what I am doing is necessary, even if it does not make sense yet." Her words offered no comfort, only deepened the mystery consuming their lives. Sleep became difficult for William. He lay awake at night, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Was she ill? The thought terrified him beyond measure. Was someone threatening her? Blackmail was not uncommon for people in their position. Had she discovered something about the family, some secret that changed everything she thought she knew? Each possibility seemed more frightening than the last. He considered hiring private investigators, but dismissed the idea immediately. That would betray her trust, violate their marriage in ways he could not justify. So, he waited, trapped between respecting her privacy and drowning in his own anxiety. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. William returned home early from an engagement that finished ahead of schedule. He walked through the front door and heard Catherine's voice coming from the study. She was on the phone, her tone urgent and emotional. "I do not know how much longer I can keep this from them. They deserve to know. Every day that passes makes it harder." William froze in the hallway, not wanting to eavesdrop, but unable to move. Catherine continued speaking, her voice breaking. "I am terrified of what this will do to them. How do I even begin to explain? How do I tell them their entire lives are about to change?" The person on the other end responded, but William could not hear what they said. William stepped back quietly, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Whatever secret Catherine had been carrying was about to be revealed the next day. He spent the rest of the day in a fog, going through motions without really being present. He looked at his children during dinner, their innocent faces unaware that something was coming, something big enough to change their entire lives, according to Catherine's own words. What could possibly be that significant? His mind spun through possibilities but kept coming back empty. Nothing made sense. Everything felt wrong. That night, Princess Kate went to bed late as she climbed in beside William and for a long moment said nothing. Then quietly, almost inaudibly, she spoke. William wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but the look on her face stopped him because she was barely holding herself together. The announcement that changed everything. Morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Breakfast was prepared. Children ate and laughed and argued about typical sibling nonsense. Catherine moved through the routine mechanically, her mind clearly elsewhere. William watched her carefully, noting how her hands trembled slightly as she poured juice, and how she kept glancing at the clock as if dreading and anticipating what came next simultaneously. After breakfast, she asked everyone to gather in the sitting room. The children exchanged curious glances but complied. Sensing this was not optional, they settled onto couches. The 3 children clustered together, William and Catherine facing them. The room felt smaller somehow, the air thicker. Catherine took a deep breath, clasping her hands together to stop their shaking. "Thank you for coming. I know this seems strange, but I have something important to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Her voice was steady despite the tears already forming in her eyes. William leaned forward, every muscle in his body tense, bracing for impact without knowing what was coming. Catherine looked at each child individually, as if memorizing their faces before whatever came next changed them forever. "You know how much your father and I love you, how we would do anything to protect you and give you the best life possible." The children nodded, confused about where this was going. George, being the oldest, spoke up. "Mom, you are scaring us. What is this about?" Catherine swallowed hard, gathering courage for words that clearly did not want to come out. "This is about our family. About decisions I made before you were born. Decisions that affect all of you in ways I did not fully understand at the time." William's confusion deepened. Before they were born, what could reach back that far? Catherine continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "When your father and I married, we desperately wanted children. But things did not happen as easily as we hoped. We struggled for a long time. We saw specialists, tried different options, and faced disappointments that nearly broke us." William's mind raced. He remembered those difficult years, the private pain they endured while maintaining public appearances. But they had gotten through it. They had their children. So, what was Catherine saying? She took another shaky breath. "We eventually sought help through advanced medical procedures, treatments that gave us the greatest chance of having the family we dreamed of." The children listened, not fully understanding, but sensing the gravity of what their mother was revealing. Catherine's next words came out in a rush, as if saying them quickly would make them easier. "During those treatments, we made choices about genetic selection, medical decisions that I thought were routine, that I thought would simply ensure healthy pregnancies. But recently, I learned something that changed everything I thought I knew about those choices." William felt ice spreading through his veins. Genetic selection, medical decisions. Where was this going? Catherine looked directly at him now, tears flowing freely. "William, the clinic we used and the doctors we trusted were not entirely honest with us about what they were doing. I found out months ago through a medical investigation that was happening completely separate from us. The clinic had been conducting unauthorized genetic modifications, experimental procedures that they never disclosed to their patients, procedures that affected the children we conceived there. The room spun. William heard the words but could not process them. Genetic modifications, unauthorized, experimental, his children. Catherine rushed on, needing to get everything out before she lost courage. I have been working with lawyers and medical experts to understand exactly what was done and what it means. The modifications were not harmful. In fact, they were designed to enhance certain traits, intelligence, physical health, and resistance to diseases. Things that sound positive but raise enormous ethical questions. Questions about consent, playing God, and what it means for our children's futures. George stood abruptly, his face pale. What are you saying? That we are not normal? That someone changed us before we were even born? Catherine reached for him, but he stepped back, his expression a mixture of confusion and anger. You let someone experiment on us. George, no, Catherine said desperately. We did not know. We never would have agreed to this if we had known. We thought we were just doing standard fertility treatments. The clinic lied to us to dozens of families. We are victims in this, too. Charlotte started crying, overwhelmed by information she could not fully understand. But knowing it was terrible. Louis looked between his parents and siblings, his young mind struggling to grasp why everyone was so upset. William finally found his voice, though it came out strangled and foreign. How long have you known? How long have you been carrying this alone? Catherine met his eyes. Guilt and anguish written across her face. 3 months. I have known for 3 months. I did not tell you because I needed to understand it first. Know exactly what we were dealing with before bringing it to you. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I see now I was just protecting myself from having to face this. William stood, his legs unsteady beneath him. He needed air, space, something to ground him in a reality that no longer made sense. His children had been genetically modified without his knowledge or consent. Someone had altered their fundamental biology for reasons he did not understand with consequences he could not predict. The violation felt incomprehensible, too large to fit inside his mind. He looked at Catherine, saw her breaking apart, and felt his own control shattering. Tears came then, unstoppable and raw. He walked out of the room, down the hall, anywhere but there. He could not breathe, could not think, could only feel the crushing weight of a truth that was about to change everything. Unraveling the conspiracy, Catherine found William in their bedroom an hour later. He sat on the edge of the bed, face buried in his hands, body shaking with sobs that had not stopped since he left the sitting room. She approached slowly, unsure of her reception, knowing she deserved his anger, but hoping for his understanding. William, she said softly, please let me explain everything. He looked up, his eyes red and swollen. Explain. How do you explain keeping something like this from me for 3 months? How do you justify making that decision alone? She sat beside him, maintaining distance, but close enough to touch if he allowed it. You are right. I should have told you immediately, but I was terrified. Terrified of what it meant. Terrified of how you would react. Terrified of what it would do to the children. I spent 3 months investigating, trying to understand the full scope of what happened, gathering evidence and legal advice. I wanted to come to you with answers, not just problems. William shook his head. We are partners, Catherine. We face problems together. You robbed me of that choice. You decided I could not handle the truth that you had to protect me. But who was protecting you while you carried this nightmare alone? His words cracked something open in her. She started crying harder. Years of control finally giving way. I am so sorry. I know I was wrong, but I did not know how to tell you that our beautiful children had been turned into some kind of experiment. How do you say those words out loud without destroying everything? William pulled her close then, his anger dissolving into shared grief. They held each other and cried. Two people who had faced countless challenges but nothing that prepared them for this particular horror. After some time, William pulled back, wiping his eyes. Tell me everything, every detail you have learned. I need to understand what we are dealing with. Catherine nodded, grateful for the chance to finally share the burden. She explained how she first learned about the investigation. A journalist had contacted the palace months ago following a lead about fertility clinics conducting unauthorized procedures. The journalist was gathering information for an expose, but wanted to inform affected families before publication. Catherine's name was on a list of potential victims based on clinic records that had been leaked. Initially, Catherine dismissed it as conspiracy theory nonsense, but the journalist provided documentation that could not be easily ignored. Medical records showing procedures that were never disclosed, consent forms that had been forged, scientific papers published by the clinic's lead researcher discussing experimental genetic modifications designed to create enhanced offspring. The papers used coded language and did not mention specific patients, but the timeline matched exactly the time when Catherine and William were undergoing treatment. Catherine hired private investigators and medical experts to independently verify the information. Everything checked out. The clinic had been running an illegal program for years, targeting wealthy and influential families. The modifications were sophisticated, targeting multiple genes associated with intelligence, physical health, and longevity. The children born through this program were essentially enhanced versions of what they would have been naturally. Not dramatically different, but optimized in ways that raised profound ethical questions. William listened, his horror growing with each new detail. Why would they do this? What could they possibly gain? Catherine explained that the lead researcher, Dr. Marcus Holloway, believed he was advancing human evolution. He saw wealthy families as ideal test subjects because they had the resources to provide their children with enhanced opportunities to reach their full potential. In his twisted logic, he was doing humanity a favor, creating a generation of superior individuals who would lead society forward. The fact that he was doing it without consent apparently did not trouble his conscience. The investigation had uncovered dozens of affected families across multiple countries. Some were royalty like them. Others were celebrities, business leaders, and politicians. All people with influence and resources. All people whose children were now walking experiments. Several families had already begun legal action against the clinic and Dr. Holloway personally. Criminal charges were pending, but legal justice did not address the immediate question facing every affected family. What did they tell their children? How did they help them process this information? William asked about medical implications. Were the children at risk? Did the modifications cause health problems? Catherine explained that according to experts she consulted, the modifications appeared stable and did not pose immediate health threats, but long-term effects were unknown because this had never been done before. The children would need ongoing medical monitoring. Genetic counseling would be important as they got older and considered having their own children someday. The modifications might be heritable passed to future generations. The full ramifications spread farther than anyone could have predicted. George appeared in the doorway, his face hard and closed off. Are you finished talking about us like we are science projects? William and Catherine jumped, not realizing he had been listening. George stepped into the room, anger radiating from his young body. Do we get a say in any of this, or do you just make all the decisions like you have been doing? William reached for him, but George pulled away. You let someone change us. Change who we are at the most basic level, and now you are crying like you are the victims, but we are the ones who have to live with this. We are the ones who are different. Catherine stood and approached her son carefully. George, you are not different in any way that matters. You are still the boy I gave birth to, raised and loved every single day of your life. These modifications do not define you. They do not change who you are as a person. George laughed bitterly, a sound too cynical for his age. You do not know that. None of us knows what this means. Maybe everything about me is artificial. Maybe I am not even really your son, just some designer baby created in a lab. The pain in his voice broke both parents' hearts. William crossed the room and grabbed George's shoulders firmly but gently. Listen to me. You are my son. Nothing changes that. Not some doctor's illegal experiment. Not genetic modifications. Nothing. You came from your mother and me. You have been loved and wanted since before you were born. Whatever was done to you was done without our knowledge or permission. But it does not change the fundamental truth that you are ours and we are yours. George's anger crumbled, replaced by fear and confusion. What if I am not who I think I am? What if everything I thought I knew about myself is wrong? Catherine joined them, wrapping both William and George in her arms. Then we figure it out together. We learn who you are, who your brother and sister are beyond whatever modifications were made. We help you understand that you are more than your genetics. You are your choices, your character, your heart. Those things were never modified. Those are purely authentically you. George collapsed into his parents, finally allowing himself to be comforted, to be the scared child he actually was, rather than the strong front he had been trying to maintain. The family fractures and heals. The following days were brutal. Charlotte retreated into herself, barely speaking, spending hours alone in her room. Louise, too young to fully grasp the situation, sensed the family's distress and became clingy and anxious. George oscillated between anger and despair. One moment, raging against the unfairness of what had been done to them, the next moment terrified about what it meant for his future. William and Catherine tried to hold everyone together while processing their own trauma. The weight was crushing. Palace officials were brought into the situation out of necessity. This was not something that could be hidden, especially with legal proceedings underway, and journalists preparing to publish their investigations. Crisis management teams assembled, lawyers drafted statements, and medical experts were consulted about how to present the information publicly. King Charles was informed and reacted with predictable fury. He demanded meetings with lawyers, threatened lawsuits against everyone involved, and insisted that heads would roll for this violation of his family. But beneath the anger, William saw fear. His father was terrified for his grandchildren, uncertain about what this meant for their futures, for the line of succession, for the monarchy itself. Questions swirled about whether genetically modified individuals could inherit the throne. Legal scholars were consulted. Historical precedents were examined. The situation was unprecedented, leaving everyone in uncharted territory. Queen Camilla took a different approach, visiting often, bringing books and games, sitting quietly with Charlotte when words felt inadequate, and playing with Louis to provide moments of normalcy. Her presence was calming, a steady anchor in a storm that showed no signs of ending. She told Catherine privately that dwelling on how this happened would drive everyone mad. The only productive path forward was focusing on supporting the children through this revelation and helping them build identities not defined by circumstances beyond their control. Extended family members' gatherings became tense. Everyone trying to act normal while elephants filled every room. The children felt the awkwardness, the careful way relatives now looked at them, and it only deepened their sense of being different, other wrong. Somehow the decision was made to tell the public sooner rather than later. A carefully worded statement was prepared explaining that the family had discovered they were victims of an unauthorized medical experiment conducted years ago. The statement emphasized that they were working with authorities to ensure those responsible face justice. The reaction was explosive. Social media erupted with speculation and conspiracy theories. News outlets ran constant coverage, bringing on experts to discuss the ethics of genetic modification, the implications for the royal family, and the future of fertility treatments. Public opinion was sharply divided, with some expressing sympathy, and others outrage on the family's behalf. Others questioned whether genetically enhanced royals represented an unfair advantage, a literal superior class. Debates raged about whether the children should be allowed to inherit titles and positions. The noise was deafening and inescapable. William and Catherine decided to shield the children from media coverage as much as possible. Devices were restricted. Internet access was monitored. They created a bubble of protection within their home. A space where the outside world's judgment could not penetrate. But complete isolation was impossible. Classmates had internet access, so information leaked in through cracks despite best efforts. George came home from school one day with a black eye, having gotten into a fight with a boy who called him a lab rat. The school handled it discreetly, but the incident reinforced how impossible normal would be for the foreseeable future. Therapy became essential. The entire family entered counseling, both individually and together. A therapist specializing in medical trauma helped them process the violation they had experienced. Another therapist worked specifically with the children, giving them tools to understand their feelings and build resilience against external judgment. These sessions were exhausting but necessary. Slowly, painfully, they began rebuilding their sense of identity and family cohesion. Progress was not linear. Terrible ones followed good days, but gradually the terrible days became less frequent and less devastating. George eventually opened up in a family therapy session about his deepest fear. He was terrified that his accomplishments were not really his, that anything he achieved would be attributed to artificial enhancements rather than his own effort and ability. How could he ever know if he earned something or if it was just programming? The therapist helped him understand that modifications might have affected potential, but actualization of that potential still required work, choice, and character. A person could have every advantage and still fail if they did not cultivate their gifts. Conversely, Modifications did not guarantee success. He was still fully responsible for who he became and what he did with his life. Charlotte's breakthrough came differently. She had been drawing obsessively, dark images full of pain and confusion. One day, she showed her parents a new picture. It depicted their family as superheroes, each member with unique powers, standing together against faceless enemies. When asked what it meant, she said simply that maybe being different was not bad. Maybe they could use whatever made them special to help people, to do good in ways others could not. Her childlike optimism pierced through everyone's darkness, reminding them that perspective was a choice. They could view this as a curse or as an unexpected gift. Neither interpretation was wrong, but one offered more possibilities than the other. Finding purpose in pain. Months after the initial announcement, the family found itself in a different place. Not healed because wounds this deep do not heal quickly or completely, but surviving, adapting, and learning to carry what could not be fixed. William threw himself into more advocacy work, partnering with organizations pushing for stricter regulations on fertility clinics and genetic research. Princess Kate focused on supporting other affected families, creating a private network where parents could share experiences and resources without media intrusion. She organized meetings where children from different families could connect, reducing their isolation by introducing them to others who understood their unique situation. These gatherings were carefully guarded with strict confidentiality agreements protecting everyone's privacy. Friendships formed, support systems built, a community created from shared trauma. The legal case against Dr. Holloway and the clinic moved forward, though slowly. Criminal charges included fraud, assault, and conducting illegal medical experiments. Civil suits from dozens of families sought damages and accountability. Holloway showed no remorse, maintaining in interviews that his work was visionary and that history would vindicate him. His arrogance only strengthened the family's resolve to see him punished to the fullest extent possible. Trials would likely take years, but no one was backing down. Justice demanded persistence. George channeled his experience into academics, developing a particular interest in bioethics. He read extensively about genetic modification, designer babies, and the philosophical questions surrounding human enhancement. His teachers noted increased maturity and focus, a seriousness of purpose unusual for his age. He told his parents he wanted to be part of the conversation about humanity's genetic future, to ensure that what happened to him never happened to anyone else. His trauma was becoming his mission. His pain transforming into a determination to create change. Charlotte returned to her art with renewed passion. But her subject matter shifted. She began creating pieces celebrating diversity and difference, challenging conventional definitions of normal. Her school displayed her work in a gallery show, and the response was overwhelming. People connected with her message. Seeing in her young perspective wisdom that transcended her years, she began receiving invitations to display her work more widely. Princess Kate and William carefully vetted opportunities, allowing ones that respected her age and autonomy while providing platforms for her voice. Louis remained the family's source of light. His innocence somehow intact despite everything surrounding him. He approached life with uncomplicated joy, finding happiness in small moments, reminding everyone that darkness did not have to consume everything consume. His laughter was medicine, his hugs, healing. The family learned to sometimes follow his lead, to step away from heavy questions and just exist together without analyzing or processing. Those moments of simple presence became as important as therapy sessions. William and Catherine's marriage emerged stronger but different. They had faced the ultimate test of partnership, navigating betrayal, secrets, and trauma that would have destroyed weaker bonds. They learned to communicate with brutal honesty, no longer hiding fears or struggles from each other. Their intimacy deepened, built on the foundation of having survived something that should have broken them. They still had hard days, moments when old wounds reopened, but they had proven they could weather storms together, and that knowledge carried them through subsequent difficulties. The public's perception gradually shifted as the family demonstrated resilience and grace. Initial sensationalism faded, replaced by grudging respect for how they handled an impossible situation. Opinion polls showed increasing support, with many people viewing them as sympathetic figures who turned violence into advocacy. The family never sought sympathy, but they did not refuse it either. They simply focused on moving forward, on building lives not defined by what had been done to them, but by how they chose to respond. A year after the announcement, the family sat together in their living room. A scene that would have seemed ordinary to any observer but carried extraordinary weight for them. They had survived. Their children were thriving despite everything. Their family remained intact. The future was uncertain, filled with questions that had no clear answers. But they faced that uncertainty together, armed with love, support, and hard-won wisdom about resilience. William looked at Kate, remembering that terrible day when she made her announcement. When his tears seemed endless, he reached for her hand, grateful beyond words for her courage, for her strength, for her presence beside him through hell. She squeezed back, her eyes reflecting the same gratitude, love, and determination to keep moving forward no matter what came next. Their children laughed about something on television. The sound filling the room with normally they had fought so hard to reclaim. This was their life now. Not perfect and not what they expected, but it was theirs. Authentic and hard-earned, and that was enough. There it is. A family's private nightmare and public reckoning. If this story moved you as deeply as it moved us, please hit that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from inside palace walls. Your support means the world.